LaCroix,
Here.
Mescal,
Here.
Northern,
Here.
Weedman.
We do have a quorum, so let's stand and do the pledge. If I could have a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Motion. Second.
Are there any questions? Okay.
Mescal,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Northern,
Aye.
LaCroix.
Aye.
Any public comments? I don't believe we have any public comments.
No one.
No one signed up? We'll head right into the PARCC results then. I'm assuming I need to move for this?
Yeah.
So thank you for letting us talk with you today.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting us talk with you today about the PARCC results. We do this every year to come to the board, and we wanted to share a little bit of information about the PARCC results. This year our report to you is a little bit earlier than it was last year, so the reports came back a little bit sooner this year. So we're heading in the right direction for that. We only are able to talk about the PARCC assessments right now. We are not able yet to talk about the Illinois Science Assessment because we're still waiting for those results from 2 school years ago, and then last year's reports still aren't here yet. So,
last count, they were 20% done.
Of those 2 years ago or 1 year? 2 years. Awesome.
yes. So we're here to share about the PARCC results. Amanda and I are going to be tag teaming through some of this information. Remember that the PARCC assessment, PARCC stands for the Partnership for the Assessment of College and Career Readiness, or college and careers. I completely said that wrong. Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Career. And remember that Illinois uses the PARCC assessment as their required state assessment. The number of states who have chosen to take PARCC continues to dwindle. And so Amanda's going to share some information a little bit later for changes for the coming years, as well as we get along the way. But remember that the PARCC assessment is specifically for literacy and for reading and for math, so literacy and numeracy. We have students in grades 3 through 8 who take the PARCC assessment, and then we have a small number of kids who take the alternate test, called the DLM, the Dynamic Learning Maps Alternative Assessment. And those are for kids whose IEP team has decided that it's not appropriate or may not be able to respond appropriately to the test features. So that's a completely different set of students and data that we're talking about. So one of the good things about the PARCC assessment was from the 16 administration to the 17 administration, there were very little changes in the assessment. If you remember the first time that we gave the PARCC assessment in 15, we made dramatic changes to 16. So we weren't able to really make any comparisons from the 15 scores to the 16, 17. Remember, in 15, there were 2 different windows. One was the performance-based assessment, and then they had another assessment called the end of the year assessment, and then they merged those scores together, and they realized the number of minutes was just too much. And so thankfully from 16 to 17, we've had some good changes in technology. They've listened to some of the issues that we had, so that's positive. We also made it easier for kids to know how to go through the test. They made it a little bit more explicit in how the test layout was good. We also got some revised reports, so that we've been able to get some new information as well. Anything else you wanted to say about that? We're remembering that the PARCC assessment, as I said, started with 2 windows, and now we're down to 1. And Amanda's going to share a little bit later how they're actually going to be reducing that a little bit even more for next school year. We're having some changes. One of the biggest things is all about the time limits that we have for the test. And one of the frustrating things is that every grade had very different lengths of time for the tests. So it's very hard to schedule because one grade had 90 minutes, for example, and another grade might have had 120 minutes. So our schedules were very confusing on how to do all those things. So let's get into the information. We wanted to share this information with you first. Our plan is that students and parents will be getting their reports, their individual reports this Friday. And on this Friday, they'll get the PARCC results. They'll also get the MAP reports that we did earlier in August and September. And we're also sending home the new student goal setting forms as well. So the parents are going to get a pretty hefty packet on Friday with all the information going out. Teachers have been working on that. But we wanted you to see the information first. So this is a chart that I created. Amanda and I have been working on this. So we're going to talk first right now about 3rd and 4th grade. This is about ELA Literacy. And so what we were doing is we were looking at the grade level information from year to year to year. So hopefully this chart makes sense from 15 to 16 to 17. You may notice that I put asterisk by 15, that we really shouldn't compare the results from 15. So really we're looking at the 16, 17. And then I did some creative coloring. And so the way we did the creative coloring was if the score was the same from 16 to 17, or 1 point above or below, I color-coded it yellow. If the score had increased from last year 2 or more points, I colored it green. And if it was 2 or more points below last year, I color-coded it red. So this is the percentage of students who met or exceeded on the ELA. One of the things that we did with the principal groups, because we have gone over this data with the administrative team, we actually looked, if you think about the 3rd grade 2016 column, then we moved to the 4th grade 2017. That would be the same group of students. So we can look at this data in 2 ways. How is consistency in one grade level? But then we also can look at the cohort of students, the same group of students moving along. So these are the results. Amanda and I both thought, though, it was easier to see it in a graph form. And so she's gone up there. So the blue is the 15 results, and the red is the 16, and then the yellow-orangish is the 17 results. And across the bottom, you'll see cross-state. Cross-state means every state that took PARCC. So not just Illinois, but all the other states that took Illinois. And then our state, and then our district, and then each of the schools that took the test. Thank you, Amanda. So you can see the trend line over time to see how the students were doing. This is information that the principals have been going through with us too. So this is 3rd and 4th grade. So here's 5th and 6th grade, the same concept of the charts of how we're looking at the numbers. So again, you can look to see how the consistency from 5th grade to 5th grade to 5th grade over the last 3 years. Or we can do the the cohort group by looking at one grade to the next grade. So the principals have all this data that they're able to analyze as well. Here again is the trend lines from 5th and 6th grade ELA. So just these simple charts lead to quite a bit of discussion with the principals to talk about the differences between schools and the differences from year to year and the different clusters of students. Continuing with the same trend is the 7th and 8th grade. This was a little alarming to see all of red in that last column. But we do know that it's a different group of students. So it's important then to look at the cohort information. And if you look, for example, from the cross-state from 7th grade and 16, it was 44 And then in 8th grade, it was 43. So it's pretty stable for the group of students. The next one down is 38 to 37, 47 to 51, 47 to 48, and 47 to 60. So the red actually feels different when you look at it compared to the group of students, compared to the grade level. I hope that makes sense to everybody. So then the same idea here with the graphs that we put together. So interesting, one of the trends that you might see in 7th grade, we saw a bigger jump in each of those categories from district to GMS to PARCC. And in 8th grade, we saw a reduction in scores. And so that does lead to more to think about the cohort of students and not the instruction that's going on. But instruction is important. Here's the same charts for math. Interestingly, the math scores are lower across state and in our district as well. So these are significantly lower numbers. For example, the 36% cross state for 4th grade math is pretty low. Here's the chart then for 3rd and 4th grade math. These were all included so that you had time to look at them. Again, we looked at the cohort of students, we looked at grade level information to see how the kids were doing as well. Again, the color coding was just me because it's helpful for me to have something to look at. 5th and 6th grade PARCC results. The principals have been talking about the differences between schools. We remember that we have been doing a significant amount of curriculum work to gain consistency between all those buildings. So my guess is, and my hope, the plan is that we will see a more consistent scoring of students because we now have a more consistent curriculum map for every school to be following.
Sorry to interrupt, but I mean, this is a transition period,
This is a transition period.
and it's going to be for several years. So while these numbers might be concerning, I don't think we're going to know what they're really saying for 2, 3, 4 more years.
And the challenge is when you hear Amanda talk in a little bit about the future, it complicates things a little bit as well. And so we always know that when we're trying something new with curriculum, researchers say that there's potentially going to be an implementation dip. So it takes a little bit of time, and then hopefully the scores will go up. But I appreciate you understanding that while this information is very important, it's very public, we are actively in the process of doing important work to make a change for all of this. But it will not happen overnight. So I appreciate that you said that. Here's the same thing for 7th and 8th grade. Pretty low. If you think about the cross states for 28% meeting or exceeding and 26% meeting or exceeding. That's very low for cross state. One of the things that was a celebration, it was typically that the district scored better than the state of Illinois. And sometimes Illinois, the majority of time actually, Illinois did poorer than the cross states.
I think there was only maybe 1 or 2 instances where the state of Illinois scored higher.
But our district scores were typically above those. So that's a positive thing. So here again are the reports, graphs. One of the things, though, that is important for us, and these are where Amanda's going to help us quite a bit, we wanted to look more specifically at some of the subgroups. We know that that's always a question out there. So Amanda and I were able to figure out how to make these handy charts for you to see. So across the bottom, Amanda's going to show that it goes 3rd grade ELA, then math, 4th grade ELA, then math, ELA, then math. And so the blue bars are the state averages. And so right away you can see that all of our boys and girls did better than the state average. Does that make sense? The average of our boys and girls did better than the average of the state, which is very good. So then you can see the 3 colored lines. So the green line is for boys, the purple line is for girls, and the district is the red rust color actually in the middle.
The state is still.
The state is the
The bars are
the
the
bars.
state.
We were actually intrigued by the purple lines going up and down, that if you notice that the high point for each one is in ELA for the girls and the lower point is in math. And then if you look at the boys line, it actually is reversed. That many times the boys were showing more in math than the girls. So that's a data point that we're going to be digging into a little bit to see what we can do differently about that. But I knew that question was going to come up, and that's an important thing for us to consider. This graph, I think, really demonstrates that point pretty well. So here's another subgroup that we wanted to look at. So this one is about the different ethnicities that we are tracking. You may notice that there are two missing along the right-hand side. We have the Pacific Islander group is missing, and the Alaskan Native are missing. We did that purposely because we had less than 5 students across the district, and so the graph turned out very confusing because of the number of students involved with it. So again, the purple bars are the state average, and then you can see the different colors. So starting from the top, I guess, the green is Asian identified students. Then going down just by Amanda's finger, pink is 2 or more races. Then the gray one is white, and then the reddish rust one is the district. And then if you're going with the mustard colored one, Hispanic or Latino, and then the purple one again is African American. So you can see some scatter. The interesting thing that we noticed is that the general trend line is similar for every ethnicity. If you notice that there's a similar pattern, somewhat, but you can see, for example, the principals talked at length about 7th grade ELA, because it seemed like that was a high point for many of the different subgroups. So it's just an interesting one. I thought this was an interesting chart for us to look at as well. And then we have one more. One of the things that we were surprised about is that the PARCC assessment doesn't disaggregate data for second languages. So that's not one of the subgroups that's on any of our reports. So Kathleen, you just looked at me like, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
We can share learnings in our system.
And so that was just an interesting one that's not on any of our reports. So similar idea about all the different colors. The purple bars, again, are the district averages. I won't go through each of those, but you'll see the mustard, the gray, and the orangish burnt ones, I guess, all certainly have a very similar path that they're traveling across. We have some work to do with students with an IEP. That's the bottom purple one that goes across. And then you'll notice that the 504 kind of is really scattered, and that has to do with there's not a good number of students in every grade who have a 504. So that's why that one kind of goes up and down. Is this making sense to everybody? Mm-hmm.
I was looking at transition years from 5th grade to 6th grade in math, and 6th grade to 7th grade in math. And I thought I saw the transition mark.
That is actually a topic that the principals talked about at length, is about those transition years. And one of the challenges has been, especially going into 5th grade, where kids coming to Frederick were coming from 4 different schools with 4 different academic plans. And so again, over time, when we get more consistent about what each of those schools are doing, we've had some good indicators that they're already in process, that we've already seen kids across the district realizing that they're doing similar things at the same time. That's a positive thing, that we're having consistency.
It also shows you why a K-8 school might actually make a difference.
There's some question about that without the lack of transitions and having a longer time in one place with consistent adults. That conversation came up again at the principal's discussion about looking at this information as well. So that might be their reasoning, to have build community over time, build relationships over time. So, Amanda.
So what does all this data mean? So we have some next steps for our schools and our district. One of the things is we're going to continue with our PLC work from last year. We're going to continue analyzing the school and district data. We have some really nice reports that we were given called the Evidence Statement Analysis Reports, and it kind of maps out the types of questions that were asked by what standard, and how many of the kids got that, and then what percentage of those kids either achieved that standard or didn't achieve that standard. So these reports are very helpful to us when we're planning. For example, one of the things that we noticed with math was that a lot of questions on the PARCC assessment have fractions or measurement and data. So that's something that we're now trying to incorporate more of, is more fractions, more measurement and data, more fractions, more measurement and data.
And earlier in the school year.
And earlier in the school year, yes.
One of the challenges with that report that Amanda was just talking about was that Pearson, the company who's worked on this, modified the report a little bit. So they added some new acronyms, they added some new pieces. So last year's report isn't exactly this year's report. So we're still able to work it through, but we were on the phone
For a good half day.
most of an afternoon trying to track down the people at the state to help us answer some questions about the new reports that were out there. So that's some of the things that Amanda and I do in the comments.
And so that will continue into our job alike work. We will use those analyses to help drive our unit guides and our unit planning, and develop our curriculum so that we're all kind of moving forward in the same direction. Another thing that we're going to do, we are part of the LCES, the Lake County group, and so with that we get so many hours of consulting with our ROE consultants. And so there is a new math and science consultant this year, and she came and met with Paul and myself, and she said, well, send me your data and I'll do some further analysis for you. So we're having an outside person looking at our data. She's particularly focusing on math, and she's going to do an analysis of that data, and then she's going to come back and meet with Paul and myself and tell us what she found. And then she said, well, I can even work with your teachers when it comes time to start writing their assessments for math. So then she's going to come back and help us with that too. So we can all kind of be heading in the same good direction to help our kids meet those
That has
standards.
been part of our plan for this school year to look specifically at 5th through 8th grade math. And thankfully, that's her specialty area. So we're actually going to use her. These are included in our fee that we pay, so we don't have to pay any more to have another resource person come and help with our staff. So we're excited that we're going to be able to have that opportunity.
We'll continue to look at our subgroups and try and analyze their performance and how to best meet the needs of those students. And then the schools will use their individual school data to help develop their SIP plans, which they'll present to you at some point. And so then moving forward, what are the changes for this year? One of the biggest changes Paul alluded to was there was a lot of time variation in the unit testing times for the students. So the first part of the math test would be 60 minutes, and then the next part would be 75, and then the last part would be 60 again. Or for our upper grades, ELA, there would be one section that was 90, and another section that was 120, and then the last section was 80. Well, that really proved challenging when we were doing our scheduling. So the PARCC Pearson listened to us, and they said, okay, you know what? For 2018, we're just going to make the unit times all the same. So you can see that for math, 3 through 5, all of the units, 1, 2, 3, and 4, are all 60 minutes. For 3rd grade ELA, all of the units are 75 minutes, and so on and so forth. So this will really help in our planning and our scheduling. They went with the lower time. So we had some test unit times last year that were about 2 hours, and so that's a long time for a kid to sit and test. So to see that 90 is the maximum, that's really a celebration. An hour and a half is still a long time, but it's not nearly as long as 2 hours. So that's one change moving forward.
That also indicates to me, though, that the test is going to look different,
Mhm.
because they can't just shorten the amount of time for kids.
They could throw out redundant items.
They did. So they got rid of some of the test items, some of the field test items they're getting rid of.
Correct.
So they're going to throw those out. Now another change coming. So Barbara and I were recently down in Springfield for the Title I ESSA conference. And at the assessment update portion, which they throw at the very end of the second day when you're just ready to get home, they shared with us that this could be our last year with Pearson as the PARCC vendor. They are putting out the RFP to have a new vendor for the PARCC assessment, which means it might be Pearson or it might not be Pearson. They don't see the PARCC assessment going anywhere, but the vendor may change, which means if the vendor changes, then we might not be able to do data comparison when we start with a new vendor. So that's a little bit uncertain. It's a little bit scary to think about.
So hopefully we will be able to, but then the likelihood is that the test might be different. The reports that we get might be different.
The item banks would change, right? So,
Not guaranteed.
Yeah. So that was the most recent update that we got when we were down in
I mean, they
Springfield.
would change anyway. And I did hear machine scoring right away. Right, so.
I did not hear that. That's new
Right,
information.
so I mean, that can be part of it. It also frees us up from, the consortium of states, so we can make changes more rapidly, and not just the state of Illinois, but.
Yes, because as it stands, Pearson is extremely expensive. The PARCC test is very, very expensive for the consortium of states using it.
Tom had a question.
Have the teachers seen the results?
So different schools are different places. So most of them have seen some components of them. They haven't necessarily seen.
I'm interested in knowing, are they surprised or not surprised by either the strengths or the non-strengths, whatever. That's an interesting reaction.
Overall, they're hopeful that our curriculum work is going to have an impact. And so they realize when they see the evidence tables and they see how heavily, like fractions and measurement and data, for example, are listed, they're appreciative that we've changed our curriculum plan to address that. But it's going to take a little bit of time for us to get better results from those. Potentially. I mean, hopefully we'll be optimistic and it'll be smooth, but.
You just never know.
Well, it sounds as if you're getting information that teachers can use to actually dissect what went on. And
That's the good part. The new reports that we started getting last year and now again received this year, they're much more user-friendly in the fact that we can look at where things are placed in our unit plans and say, okay, we need to get to this much quicker. We need to move this up earlier in the school year. So, for example, the measurement and data or even the geometry, those are being used as vehicles for all of the other content. So when you're talking about multiplying or dividing or any of those skills, they're using measurement and data and geometry as the vehicle to get to those. So it's kind of double dipping.
They may take data from a map or a chart or a graph and then have to do something with it. They have to choose that problem. They have to gather the data and then do the algorithm or the work problem to do those things.
Yeah.
How much frustration is there? I mean, I guess with released items, to be able to, or what is the balance between trying to teach to the way PARCC is designed versus what it's fairly assessing? Like,
So we are trying to emulate some of the test structures in our work that we're doing with our common assessments and our cycle assessment. When I say that, for example, in PARCC, we have something called truth PARCC questions. They have a question that you have to identify what the theme is, or whatever question. And then the second part is, what's the best evidence that supports that in the text? So we've been trying to put those kind of questions into our regular school, into our regular weekly work or into our assessment. So kids are being exposed to that kind of experience. Part of our challenge with some of the PARCC assessments is that we question always their alignment to the target. And so some of them are very good, and we think they're good examples, and even though PARCC said, well, these were from changed them over time when they've realized that there's been some glitches in some of their exams. Also, the pool of release items is fairly small.
It is very small.
The challenge also is those are available for everyone, so students can find those and that's fine, but then we think that that's the only way to test. The difficulty is the release items are only a sampling, and there's lots of other kinds of questions that they ask on part two. They haven't released a full test. They haven't released, all of the reasoning for all of them. That's the hard part. ISAT used to give us a full practice test, and you can have the full experience do it. We're not there yet. We don't have enough samples to go out.
In general, is speed a factor in these tests, fifth grade math test?
Most of the kids finish in the time.
In the time allotted, yes.
Um,
Most kids finish well before the time.
Some kids' time is actually negative, but some kids go too fast through it. And they're worried about the time.
Yeah.
And so they just plow through it. And the test, as soon as you hit,
Submit.
It's alert,
It's
isn't there
done.
alert on there if they're going to?
So it does ask them, so at the end of a unit is a section of the test. So let's say I'm finished with section 1 of my ELA test. It will prompt me like 3 times if I want to submit my test. And we teach our students and our teachers who are the proctors, once the kids finish and they see that submit button, they shoot their hand up and the teachers walk them through. And one of the nice features of the test is that right on that last page with the first submit button, it lists, okay, question 1 answered, question 2 skipped, question 3 answered. So I might say, hey, did you want to go back and try question 2 before you submit that? Oh yeah, I forgot to do that. And then they can go back and do that. And then they go through it again. Okay, I've seen they've answered all the questions. Okay, let's go ahead and submit your test.
what you were talking about is actually on the math test.
Oh, okay.
And so the math test has a new feature that if the student clicks too fast, the computer actually kicks it out, kicks the student out, and the proctor gets a flag saying the student is rapid guessing, and so then the student isn't able to continue to answer any questions until the teacher intervenes. So that's a new feature this year that we actually did see in place.
Yes.
We saw it in action this year with some kids. The difficulty on math, if you continue to rapid guessing wrong, your math score continues
Goes
to go
down.
And so it's really not a great feature. We do get a report about how long the student took on math.
On map testing, we don't get that same thing for map testing.
I will say also, one of the ones with timing, one of the ones we struggle with is some of our high achieving kids in math, because they analyze the questions so deeply that they're the ones that could be scoring real high and end up maybe not quite there because they just analyze things. And we've been working with the kids to try and trust yourself a little bit instead of, they know their multiplication tables, but then they go back and they double check it or things like that.
And Eric, are you speaking more specifically to math?
Math. I'm talking math, PARCC. I'm just talking PARCC because the math they can, their time limit's not there. But for PARCC, where there is a time limit, that's the group we find that runs out of time more than anybody else. Most kids finish within the ranking time that they're given.
Any other questions? Reaction?
We know that this is an important data piece, but it's just one of our data pieces. And so we also know that we have taken some pretty significant steps to hopefully modify these over time as well, so you can have better results for our students. That's what we have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll move on to some board reports if anyone has anything. I will say that I went to the choir concert here at GMS. What day was that? What's today, Wednesday? Monday?
Monday.
It was a Monday. And it was very nice, some good music. And the kids, having only been in school for a few weeks, were really, really impressive for that amount of time. So, a lot of fun.
Is that common to have the first concert that soon?
This is unusual, I think, right?
That was a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah, yeah.
She tied it into some goal setting that she was doing with the kids
Mhm.
and parent communication. And there's also a high school connection, Tom, with the choirs at the high school that she was just getting the kids ready for as well. So there's a little bit of presentation work that she wanted to work on with the kids before we put them up in front of all of the high school students and the audience there as well too. So
Yeah, I think the first concert's usually in November, isn't it?
it's usually early November,
Yeah.
mid-November, correct?
Yeah.
I have occasional walk through a couple gyms to see a principal in the back, well, supervising or whatever. And in a couple elementary schools, I ask kids, how's lunch? And I get a very positive response all the way around.
That's
Very
good.
nice. Yeah, very nice here.
That's good.
I attended the Frederick Family Campout, and that was just an excellent event. It was really fun last year, and I think the turnout was even more this year. And I love it because I just met a lot of different parents from other schools and that I didn't know before. And my kids had a great time. And I like the fact that if you don't have camping gear, then you can just go and watch the movie and be there for all the activities and then go home and come back for breakfast. So I just, all around, I thought it was a great event.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, and
good
I
turnout.
commend the teachers and staff for that.
I mean, it was significantly more people this year, wasn't it? It seemed like it.
About 75 families, about 250 people
Yeah,
total. So yes, it was way up.
that's great, yeah.
I just want to say that Leslie updated my website with the diversity information, and we've had a lot of interest, and she did an amazing job in terms of doing that. Had a lot of people reaching out looking for flyers and information related to it, so you guys get a chance, check it out.
Thank you. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Sure. Tom, you had asked me about the right at school to do a little report. So instead of having Jim come and do the whole report, I've shown you, or to have it in front of your tables here, you'll see that the overview enrollment has increased. Last year in the spring it was 163, and in the fall we've already gone up to 197. The electives participation has gone up. I did do a new promotional video for them. Had to do it several times before I got it quite right. But so that's going to, we'll have local people that are on their promotional video. So they're doing very well, and they have continued to increase at all of their sites. So we've been very pleased.
Can you remind me again, when did we change?
Oh gosh, is this their third year?
It's their third year.
Yeah.
Third year.
Yeah.
They study increasing every year?
Yes. That's all I have.
All right. Moving along, if I could have a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the personnel addendum that was handed out this evening.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any questions? Okay.
Northern,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
LaCroix,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Mesco.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on to action items. First, if I could have a motion to approve the contract with Performance Services.
And I do want to let you know the amounts for each of the buildings. And Kurt is here tonight as well, if you have any questions for him. Frederick, the cost would be $1,874,000. Middle school, $2,354,000. Park, $1,385,000. And Prairie View, $1,685,000. There's some dollars in there too, but so, and then in the
Could you go over those one more time?
Sure.
Just a little slower.
I did buzz right through that, didn't I?
No, that's-
Frederick, $1,874,215. Middle school, $2,354,089. Park, $1,385,996. And Prairie View, $1,685,768. Those were figures we got pretty late this afternoon. And the contract, the new contract that you have in front of you is the final one that has been approved by our attorney. And it was, I apologize for not having it in the board packet. It was finalized right before we got here. So on page 6, you will see Chris has, first of all, Chris Bobeck, I sent him home. He has pink eyes, and he's got all sorts of other things. We had him in quarantine all day, so we told him to go home. He highlighted where the changes were, so on page 6, making sure that the insurance carriers were of a specific qualification. On page 7, adding performance services to our insurance policy, which we typically do in all construction
We
contracts.
add them to ours, or they add us as an additional to theirs?
We have both.
Both, okay.
On page 9, there's any consequential damages, the sentence that we added, we would pay for those, but only to the extent not covered by policies and insurance. And then the last page was, okay, we promised that we're going to see a savings in our energy, and if after 30 days this isn't working, we are able to get out of the contract.
Again, the numbers you talked about in terms of contract price, could you express for our viewers how that's being paid for?
Sure. So for Park Campus, that will be paid out of developer donation, so we will not have to finance that at all. And then for the other 3 buildings, we'll have to finance. Right now, we're working with, I'll never say this, I never say it right, State Lake. That's it. I say it always backwards. So we're working with them to look at some financing.
And the goal is not to have to use taxpayers' dollars.
Correct.
And realize the savings in energy.
Yes.
For our district.
There may be for a couple of, I mean, we feel strongly, Chris and I feel strongly that, you know, we don't want to wait 2 or 3 years to begin paying on this. So we might not see as much upfront savings because we want to start on this and save the taxpayers' money down the line to get the principal paid off as soon as we can. But all of that we'll bring back to you. This is just for the contract. The financing and all of that will come back to you for a vote. Do you have anything you want to add, Kurt?
Thank you. No. Well, as said before, that's still a not to exceed number.
Right.
So
we're hoping it's going to be less.
Yes, anticipated being less. I can't tell you what. Once we get final structural and civil in place, they'll be able to tell us exactly. And when we walk contractors through, we'll get better pricing. This is a very solid budget. We feel really good about it, but just want to make sure everyone is aware of that.
And for Park, we have approval by Round Lake to start with that. So that one, and we don't have to do financing. So that one will be able to get started with more quickly. Prairie View is in Haynesville. We have dates to go meet with the board there, as well as at Grays Lake Middle, at the Village of Grays Lake. So they should all be completed by November, the end of November, the approvals for both the villages. But at least with Round Lake and Park, we know we can get started quickly. And just as a reminder, Prairie View and Frederick are ground mounts, and Park and Grays Lake Middle School are roof mounts.
Do I have a motion yet? I don't think so.
No.
I'll make that motion.
Are there any other questions? Okay.
Meskel,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Northern,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Strack.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, that's exciting to
It is.
start on that. So, Thank you very much. Next, if I could have a motion to approve the major impact purchases for the special ed department at a total cost of $56,031.45.
And just a reminder, this is Chromebooks and resource materials, and they're paid out of the special ed grant.
So moved.
Second. Any questions? Okay.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Meskel,
Aye.
Northern,
Aye.
Parkinson.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item, if I could have a motion to approve the contract with Erickson Engineering for the reorganization of Frederick School busing.
So we needed approval by the board to proceed forward with the design phase of this piece. And the village will not consider paying a portion of that until after we have this design phase completed. So, pardon me?
I said they want it done first.
Right. So that's what this piece of this is.
Have we did something similar with PARCC, with the drop off and pick up?
We have not. I know that's something we probably should consider at some point.
I agree with you on Park. I've been scheduled to work with some kids after school out there right at the time, and it's murder. The policeman out there one time, and I just find this out when church run down the side road against the traffic, because when the traffic moving anyway, so I just drove on the wrong side, parked the car. And so
Tom, you're being recorded.
nobody was moving. So the policeman did everything but Mirandized me. So what I learned from that was, do not take the first session, take the one at 5 o'clock. Be dark going in and dark coming out.
Yeah, maybe that's something we could look at for next year or whatever, but, do you have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any other questions or comments?
LaCroy,
Aye.
Northern,
Aye. Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Strack,
Aye.
Meskel.
Aye.
Motion carries. Next, if I could have a motion to approve the following board policies: 2:260 uniform grievance procedure, 4:60 purchases and contracts, 6:80 teaching about controversial issues, 6:180 extended instructional programs, 6:210 instructional materials, 7:100 health, eye, and dental examinations, immunizations, and exclusion of students, and 8:70 accommodating individuals with disabilities.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Are there any questions about those? They're all pretty minor changes, as I recall.
Yes,
So.
yes.
Okay.
Strack,
Aye.
Northern,
Aye.
LaCroy,
Aye.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Meskel.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Just a comment, you're seeing the news tonight where a woman was put in jail for a week.
For
while her kids-
contempt of court. Yeah,
For doing what?
She didn't.
She didn't want her kid to get against something or other,
Oh.
and so they put her in, she's a guest of the state for.
Oh, interesting.
Gets the shot.
But it's in Michigan, if I remember right, and the law there is that both parents have to agree on
Oh, okay.
what they're going to do, and so there was an agreement, apparently, or something like that, but then she had signed a consent order with the court or whatever, and then defied that order, and so now she's going to. Unfinished business, update on the district copiers.
So we have about half of our fleet that the contract will be up soon. So last week, Chris met with 4 potential vendors, described what the needs were, and he will be meeting with them again next week. All 4 of them are going to come back with a proposal. So probably the first, no, he's got 4 to meet. Yeah. He will be bringing a recommendation to the board probably the first meeting in November. Won't be ready for the next.
And so in his memo, he said that was going to be on the agenda as an action item. Did he mean as a discussion item?
Will be a discussion item the next meeting, and
Oh,
then
then, okay.
the action on the first meeting in November.
Okay. Are there any questions or about copier contract or anything?
I'm pleased that there's 4
Yeah, that's
vendors that are interested in group
2
coaching.
last time.
Yeah, we only had 2, right, so this is good.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Next, new business, summer school demographics.
Well, you have, thank you, Sue, for taking, we received the list of students in each of these programs, and Sue went through them and separated them to the male and female. I think that was your question, Tom, to look at some of the different demographics. So if you look at that, you'll see that many of them are, there's not that significant difference. There are a few that stood out in relation to boys and girls. For example, there were more girls than boys in the second helping reading, math, puzzle mania, and drawing. On the other side, for Minecraft and for activity camp, there were more boys, many more boys. But then when I looked at computer programming, where I expected to see a more significant difference, there were 6 boys and 4 girls. So I think we're headed more towards where, Tom, you hope we are. But the Minecraft, that was 17 to 6. Then the yum yum in my tum, there were more girls. They wanted to do that. Can't imagine why. In Puzzle Mania, I thought maybe there would be more boys than girls in that either, and there was 8 females to. One thing would be interesting to look at the age, and is that, as they get older, does there more? So did that help you? Okay.
Okay. Next, the ISB IIII delegate. So for the conference next month, last year I was the delegate. I'm willing to do that again unless somebody has a strong desire to.
What date is the conference on again?
November 18th is when the delegate.
Yeah, it's that weekend. This is the weekend before Thanksgiving.
And we usually have an alternate too.
Yeah.
I'll be the alternate.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you were last year too.
So basically, what you'll be voting on are in these books that are in front of you.
Do we have the same attorney as CEDAW?
I
Same
don't know
firm?
that.
Maybe we could put on for discussion next time,
These,
a discussion of the resolutions.
okay.
Talk about how we'd like to go on those.
We also need somebody who's going to the IASB dinner to be the voting member of your
Oh yeah, I'm not able to attend. I'm going to be out of town for work.
next Wednesday night.
I can do it.
I will.
If David, you want to be the voting member, then that's fine. Okay.
And Tom, if you're going and he doesn't make it, you're it. All right.
Alternate. First alternate.
Over
That's right. That is exactly right. Alrighty. The 10-year Health Life Safety Survey at Park Campus.
Yes, so we, you've got it here in your packet, but Park is the next one to have to finish their life safety, 10-year life safety. And I think Keith would agree that the price that came in from
Yeah, I
Wall.
was shocked.
Yeah.
They definitely want our business.
Much, much lower than we expected. We'll have that on an action item to approve them, but we were very pleased.
Okay. I mean, 6 cents a square foot seems like not very much. So.
Right.
No. Well, it's a big school, but yeah, that's.
Yeah.
I was thrilled, like I said, I was shocked.
Okay.
Can you tell me a little bit about what is a life safety survey?
Sure.
And why do we do it?
Well, first of all, we're required by every 10 years by the state to have to go through and they look. But Keith, can you explain?
Yes, what they'll do is they'll go through the building and they'll look for any life safety devices that might be missed or might need to be added, especially in our newer buildings, because they fall into the newer codes. Let's see, one of them that we went through and did in all the buildings was we put the panic button for the kilns on the outside of the room instead of on the inside of the room.
They look at drinking fountains, are they
look at
the
drinking
appropriate?
fountains, they look at the structural being of the building. I'm trying to think.
The ramps?
Lights, ramps.
Ramps, are they up at the right level?
Oh yeah, sidewalks, parking lots.
They look at things like the fire extinguishers
Fire
and
extinguisher,
the alarm system
And
and that
not
kind of
so
stuff?
much that, they will somewhat, but not the fire extinguishers, but the alarm system itself, they will. They'll
Okay.
definitely
The size
look
of the braille by the elevators has to be a certain number of inches.
not too much, they didn't
Um,
look at that.
Yeah, yeah.
They
So-
pretty much give us a really good rundown of the condition of our building, and then we divide out what needs to be put on the life safety plan that goes down to the state. And what is it, we've got 2 years, 1 year and 5 years to get it done.
So there's some things that are on there that you've got to do right now because they pose a safety issue for your students and staff. And there's others that you need to consider, and
Right.
other ones that
2
you
years
have.
ago, we did Fredericks and Prairie View because we had written a note to the state to allow us to do those 2 buildings together. We didn't get, I think it's a page and a half on each building. Some of it was trip hazards. Some of it was questioning whether there should be a heat detector in a closet where there's a sprinkler head, and we disputed that. When the architect found the code, went through it, it's off the list because we are legal with the sprinkler head in there, and we don't have to have a heat detector in there. They go through and they don't have the book with them, they just go through it, and I mean, they walk through the building like a fine-tooth comb. They really do. You know, they'll write up if stuff's in front of electrical panels that teachers have stacked that don't belong. And most of that stuff we deal with in-house, but it's good to have another set of eyes go across and look at what we got going on in the buildings.
This is required of us every 10 years at each building.
Yeah, we'll be probably getting ready to do the other ones here shortly. Because the other, let's see, Avon, Meadowview, Woodview, and here are all grouped into one. They did those as 4 buildings as one package. So I don't know if we'll do that again or ask the state to give us a little leeway and divide them up so we can do them at a more affordable rate than doing all 4 of them at once, because what would that be? Holy Moles is 100, 300, probably 350, 400,000, probably 500,000 square feet all at one shot. Even at 6 cents, that's a pretty good
Good chunk of
change.
money.
So I would see if we could write a letter to the state again and ask to do 2 and 2 and divide them up to where it's more affordable for us. And again, if there are problems in the buildings, it gives you 2 years and 5 years to get it done instead of 2 buildings at a time instead of doing all 4 at once. I don't foresee anything because the last one, they went through it very well and we didn't have any dings to speak of. They were all minor. But again, most of it's code changes, trip hazards, like in a library if the carpeting's tore up or that stuff, they'll put that in there. It's very thorough. If you want to come in sometime or meet with me, I can show you the book and we can definitely go over and you can see what they're doing and what they're looking for.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. Future agenda items.
Well, we're going to do the discussion of the 2017 resolution, so that'll take some time to go through there. We'll have the initial discussion of the district copier proposals. That's all I have right this minute.
Okay. So it's going to be on the 17th is the date of before the next.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
first one I said, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't think of anything else right now, so.
There may be some other things, but
Okay. Anything else? Anyone?
I wanted to bring up just the committee meetings that we have.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of discussed in our policy committee, and you came in later, but Paul had a good suggestion, Paul Lewis, on conducting meetings. So as far as maybe setting, especially with new meetings, with new members coming on, some of the people who are involved in the meetings are from the community, parents, staff. And in order to build trust, I wanted to discuss the idea of trying to, at least we talked about superintendent meetings, bringing in guidelines or trying to work out just ways of conducting meetings so that people feel comfortable and that they can trust what they're saying in a meeting. And I think that's really important, especially in some of the meetings that happen, diversity committee, et cetera. So Paul had a good suggestion of just some of the work that he's done with professional learning communities, trying to bring some of those principles into our committee meetings. And I wanted to bring that up as something that we could all consider as a board in the way we conduct our meetings.
Sure. Is that something that you could, the PLC reference, is that something that you could give us an example of?
Specifically talking about our conversation, when a group gets together in a professional learning community, we usually establish norms in how the group operates. And so it's kind of our working conditions and the way we get along and how we respond to things. And so I mean, that was a topic that we can add to, frankly, all of the committees if that's a desire.
Well, why don't you bring now a copy of what we have for the current PLCs and PDTs, and then we can take a look at it and see if that
And we
relates.
can talk about it as a board and,
Right.
and see what,
Perfect.
yeah.
It's kind of like Robert's Rules of Order, kind of for government, but different.
Sort of. It's how do you
Not
get
as formal.
right.
Yeah.
But for example, once a decision is made, we all are going to support it when we leave the meeting. We're all very clear about what can and can't shared if something there's confidentiality, so that we're trusting. If you have something to say, you need to say it in the meeting. Those are kind of the norms that we have in many of our working groups for our teachers, so that it's just our standard operating procedures. It's just the way we work through.
And we were also going to, I think that was the policy committee we did agree to some operating principles for the board with Barbara Tony the last time, so we could
Yeah,
bring
we did
them
last-
back and
and
take a
bring-
look
yeah,
at them.
look at those again too. Yeah.
Well, so everybody would have to sign an agreement or something, or?
No, it's just,
No, it's just a,
Guiding principles.
yeah.
so I'll get the board agreement, so we'll have both the norms and the copy of the latest
Yeah.
board agreement, so we can take a look at that.
Okay. Public comments? We do not need a closed session, so if I could just have a motion to adjourn?
LaCroy,
Hi.
Parkinson,
Aye.
Mesco, Mack, oh, sorry, Strack,
Aye.
Northern.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night.